Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to untangle the rules around paid vacation in Switzerland. It's something everyone's entitled to, but the details can get surprisingly tricky. We're going to break it all down so you know exactly what your rights are. Let's get right into it.
But first, let me ask you something. In today's always connected world, when you're on vacation, is it a real vacation? Or do you find yourself, just taking a quick peek at your emails? Maybe answering that urgent call from your boss? It's a pressure that, let's be honest, a lot of us feel. And this is where you see that huge gap between the idea of vacation and the reality. I mean, legally, the whole point of time off is to rest and recharge so you come back to work refreshed. But for so many people, it just turns into another office, just with a better view. The most important thing to remember is this. Legally, you are not required to be available, period. And knowing the rules is how you protect that crucial downtime.
So here's our game plan for getting you up to speed. We're going to start with the absolute basics, then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of calculating your days. After that, we'll talk about who gets to decide the dates, what happens in some special cases, and finally, we'll cover all the rules around pay and deadlines.
All right, let's kick things off at square one, understanding your basic fundamental right to paid time off.
The law in Switzerland, specifically the Code of Obligations, is crystal clear here. For almost every worker, the absolute legal minimum is 4 weeks of paid vacation a year. That's the floor. It can't be any less than that.
And get this, the law actually gives an extra week, 5 weeks in total, to anyone under the age of 20. And just to repeat, 4 weeks is the minimum. Your contract can always give you more, but it can never ever give you less. Oh, and if you join or leave a company partway through the year, it's simple. Your vacation is just calculated proportionally for the time you actually worked.
Okay, now we're getting to the part that honestly causes the most confusion. How do those weeks the law talks about actually turn into a number of days off? Getting this right is so important.
The correct way to do it is actually beautifully simple. First, you just figure out how many days you work each week. And it doesn't matter if they're full days or half days, a workday is a workday. Then, you take your vacation entitlement, let's say it's 4 weeks. And finally, you just multiply those two numbers together. That's it. It's really that easy.
So the bottom line is, stick to this method. The number of days you physically work in a week multiplied by the number of vacation weeks you're entitled to. Trust me, any other way of calculating it is probably going to give you the wrong answer.
Which brings us to probably the single biggest myth out there about Swiss vacation law. So many people think their vacation is based on their employment percentage, whether they work 50% or 80%. That is completely 100% wrong. The law couldn't care less about your percentage. It only cares about the number of days you show up to work each week.
And this slide is the perfect example of why this matters so much. Check this out. We've got Maria and Carlos. They both work a 50% contract, but Maria spreads her work over 5 half-days a week. So her calculation is 5 workdays times 4 weeks, which gives her 20 half-days of vacation. Now look at Carlos. He also works 50%, but he does it in 2.5 full days. So his math is 2.5 times 4, which equals 10 full days off. See? Same employment percentage, totally different work schedules, and a completely different number of vacation days.
Okay, so now you know exactly how many days you have. But the next big question is, who decides when you can actually take them? This is where we get into a legal balancing act between you and your employer.
So here's the deal. The law says the employer gets the final say on scheduling. And that makes sense, right? They need to make sure the business keeps running. However, and this is a really big however, they are legally required to take your wishes into account, especially when it comes to things like family needs, like if you need to take time off during school holidays. They can't just say no for no reason. They need a good business justification.
Your employer can also declare company-wide holidays, where everyone has to take a vacation at the same time. You see this a lot with factories that shut down for a couple of weeks, or for that quiet period between Christmas and New Year's. But here's the key. Unless it's already in your contract, they have to give you at least 3 months' notice. No surprises.
All right, let's dive into some of the trickier situations. What happens with your vacation days if you're leaving your job? Or what if you get sick? Don't worry, the law is actually quite clear on these things.
So, let's say you've handed in your notice. Can your boss force you to use up all your leftover vacation days during that notice period? Generally, the answer is no. And the reason is simple. The two things have totally opposite purposes. Your notice period is legally your time to look for a new job. Vacation is for rest. You can't really do both at once, and the law gets that.
But of course, there's an exception. There's always an exception, right? This one is sometimes called the 1-for-3 rule, and it only comes into play if your employer has released you from your duty to work during your notice period. So what is this rule? Well, if your boss says, hey, you don't need to come in for your notice period, just stay home, we'll keep paying you, then they can start to offset some of your remaining vacation days. The ratio is fixed. For every 3 days they release you from work, they can count one of your vacation days as officially taken.
And for our final section, let's talk about the money and the clock. This is all about vacation pay, getting cashed out, and that all-important question: do your vacation days expire? This is another huge myth we have to bust right now. So many people believe their vacation days are a use it or lose it kind of deal that vanishes on December 31st. That is absolutely false. Your right to that vacation time doesn't just disappear. It actually has a time limit, or a prescription period, of 5 years. And this timeline shows you exactly how that 5-year clock works. Let's say you're earning your vacation entitlement for the year 2025. The 5-year countdown to claim that specific time off doesn't even start until January 1st of the next year, 2026. This means you have until the very last day of 2030 to use up your vacation from 2025.
This is a really important principle. The entire goal of vacation law is to protect your health and make sure you get rest. That's why your employer can't just give you money instead of time off while you're still working for them. A cash payout is only allowed for any unused days right at the end of your employment contract.
Now, when a payout does happen, the math is super specific. As you can see, there are 2 different formulas. The first one is for hourly workers, where vacation pay is often added on top of each paycheck. That's calculated as a percentage of 15 weeks in a year. The second formula is what's used for that final payout when you leave. Since you're not actually taking those vacation weeks, the denominator is smaller, which leads to a slightly higher percentage, like 8.33% if you had a 4-week entitlement.
So let's wrap up with this final thought. Your vacation is not a perk or a gift from your boss. It's a legal right, one that's designed to protect your health and well-being. So now that you know the rules, I want you to ask yourself, are you actually getting everything you're entitled to?